Welcome to Inside the Numbers, the Rock Daisy Sports Performance Podcast with your host, Coach Cody Hughes. Join us to unlock the secrets behind athletic performance as we break down the metrics and transform your collected data into powerful, actionable insights. Tune in for exclusive interviews with top coaches and professionals who are revolutionizing their training programs with data. If you love what you hear, please share it on X, Instagram, and YouTube, and tag us at RockDaisyAMS. Welcome back to Inside the Numbers Sports Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Hughes, and today we've got on the OG sports performance podcaster of all time, Coach Ron McKeefery. Coach, thanks for coming on, hanging out with me.
Cody, appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man, first off, if you guys are just new to this podcast game, if you didn't go back and listen to Iron Game Chalk Talk, you're really missing out. I know that was a long time. I mean, how many episodes did you end up doing, Coach? I mean, it was
7 years. So, I had 500 plus, I think, something like that.
That's really impressive. And that, at least knowing doing it now, I feel like it's way more accessible now than ever, I guess, with all the technology and all. But I just want to say thank you, for doing that.
Appreciate that.
And all those episodes, I believe, are still available, right? You still got to listen to them, right?
I did it. I put it on YouTube at the same time before kind of video podcasting was a thing. And it really just did it for hosting more than anything. But they all live there and some great stuff for sure.
Cool. So yeah, if you got any young coaches out there that didn't even know that existed, please go listen to all those, just full of gold nuggets and everything. So the biggest reason I want to bring you on, Coach, is just your career has just been so decorated, and you've been in so many places and been in so many different roles. And, for those of you that don't know, Coach McKeefery joined on with Rock Daisy as a customer at one point and saw the value of all right, we've got to be able to harness all this information, and so take me through, even in the early days, because you've been coaching probably as long as I've been alive, Coach. And back when maybe what data and information, early in your career, maybe you were more we're just going to worry about max numbers. That's kind of what we're doing. That's what's important, conditioning tests. And maybe what happened along the way, of how the technology came into play, and maybe some things you learned, and then where you're at now with all of that.
Yeah, I think early in my career, I was your typical meathead strength coach, athlete, and didn't, went to school for biology and exercise science and kinesiology, and really didn't have, a computer background. This is, freaking me. So I remember them putting a computer lab in my college. So, so Excel and all these different computer applications was things that I wasn't as familiar with and didn't think that I needed going into our profession. And I remember running 40s at the University of South Florida and coming into my office, which was a little closet at the time, and typing into Excel, column 1, 4 point whatever, column 2, 4 point whatever. And then literally taking my calculator out and 4.1, 4.47 plus 4.58 divide by 2 and get the average. And I remember that taking me, 45 minutes to do. A friend of mine came in and was like, why are you doing that? And he just did the little equals average,
the formula.
I just dropped it all down, and it took 2 seconds. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And, I think through my career, there's been a bunch of times where technology and those types of things have made my life more efficient. And when you coach as hard as we coach for as long as we coach, anything that's going to give you 20 more minutes with your family, an hour with your family, those types of things, that became, I saw a correlation there, and so I wanted to seek those things out. Naturally, I'm inquisitive, and I would just YouTube, I would research, I would ask questions, and I would find as many different ways to make my life more efficient. And technology often solved a lot of those problems. So, I wrote a book a couple of years ago where, to be a success, you have to be 3 things. You have to be a great technician. You have to know the science. You have to know progressions or regressions and all those types of things. But, what really separates the good strength coaches from the rest is the ones that can manage time, people, and resources. And, and so understanding those things, that's, we didn't go to school for that. We didn't go to school for accounting and people management and organizational dynamics and those types of things. And so, really upskilling myself and challenge myself to grow in that area. I had to do it young. I was a 23-year-old head strength coach, and I had to do it quickly. And then beyond that, became the third part of that formula is to be an entrepreneur and be forward thinking and constantly sharpening the sword. It doesn't mean create additional revenue streams, but I think if you're a strength coach, you better, because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you don't have a job if you do this long enough. But it really is just being forward thinking and not being comfortable where you're at, and so Rock Daisy and other technology tools became ways for me to stay ahead of the curve.
Right.
And to continually find solutions to problems I was having, either with creating buy-in to our program or to show advancement from a recruiting standpoint. And I know Rock Daisy solved a lot of problems during that time.
Yeah, no doubt. So go back to your coaching is like, I want you to take me to like the old days of tech. So like, I don't know, were you using Tendos like way back in the day? Like everybody the whole like what's old is new is old, all the VBT, I think that the technology race with driving down prices, I guess now with demand and competition with technology because it's just booming. But it's almost like some people are thinking this VBT thing's new. It's not new, Coach.
No, not at all. I mean, you go back to Verkhoshansky work and things on those lines, and it's definitely not new. I think our understanding of it, I think its application is probably the biggest thing, and how to create the buy-in with your athletes. And we've always known that like you can't just drop them into grease every day and expect them to have results long term. There has to be an element of that so that they know that they can push through hard things. But more often than not, as a coach, I'm pulling athletes back than having to kick them in the ass, and using technology and VBT and those and recovery tools and things like that has given me a good way to be able to show our athletes like, hey, look, this is the time to push. This is the time to come back. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And they're getting smarter and smarter every day because of technology and social tools and those types of things. And so it's easier to create the buy-in that you're trying to do as a coach and not just have them trained.
Right. 100%. When, say earlier in your career, maybe South Florida or Tennessee or wherever you were, one thing I see, in technology is just the feedback. Like that's like the surface level of like just getting feedback to realize the intent of training. Was there a moment in your career where you saw that like really make a difference?
I think, the old coach in me and I think all the old coach listening would say that if you're a good coach, then you would create dialogue with your athletes and you would get that information back, by being on the floor and being in the trenches. I think it's easy to get overwhelmed with this job. Like it's one of the things that I tell young coaches is don't wait till you're a head strength coach to prepare like a head strength coach. Make sure you're writing your programs now, writing your policies now, writing all those types of things and be able to tweak instead of when the bullets are flying, having to create those things from scratch. Because like if you need to create the weight room's closed sign, that takes time unless you have one that you can just go manipulate really quick and put up, and so I think, being able to use like RPE and some of those types of things it helps, especially people that maybe that's natural,
right.
or they're overwhelmed. It's a good dashboard to be able to kind of see things really quick and kind of get a little bell system or a stoplight system to be able to see and go have those conversations. But I would also challenge people to not rely on that and to be having those conversations and really digging into your athletes that way.
Yeah. So do you think technology can limit athletes to mentally wise? Like they see these numbers and it creates this like narrative in their head that like, oh, I can't train hard because I don't feel good. Because to me that's like the other side of the coin.
Yeah, that's not my experience really. I think most athletes see the benefit in it, and they're raised by Madden scores and all those types of things. Like I think they see the benefit in it. I think where there's challenges is when we become too reliant on the technology, and inevitably any tool, technology, equipment, whatever, like it's going to have limitations and it's going to have challenges.
Right.
And what I've often found is when the data is not matching up with properly, all of a sudden somebody runs a 23 mile per hour GPS and you're like, that guy didn't run 23 miles per hour. That's when it creates conflict,
Yeah.
And so being able to know how to scrub data, be able to dig into it, be able to interpret it, to answer those questions when those things arise, and also create an environment to where it's like, hey, look, technology is an aspect of our program, but it's not the pinnacle.
Right.
To me, that's the key, and being able to really integrate it in a proper way.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Do you think that there's two extremes that sometimes people can be way too reliant on the tech to tell them how to coach, or to not rely on their their conscious, their eye, their history, their wisdom. And then on the other side, like you've got maybe the stubborn coach who thinks that tech can't help them because they've been doing it this way this whole time. Are you seeing coaches? I feel like I'm seeing coaches learn to gravitate now towards that blend of like, if you don't get on board, you're going to get left. But at the same time, coaching is coaching.
I think there's trepidation anytime it's new, right? Again, like none of this, none of this was part of my curriculum when I was in college. So like I had to continue to learn. I had to continue to challenge myself and ask those questions, and to be willing and humble enough to ask stupid questions. And
Yeah.
I think in our business, to show any kind of weakness, I think often it gets kind of misconstrued,
Right.
and that's probably my superpower, is the fact that I'll just ask questions, and I'll ask you a million questions until I'm blue in the face, and I don't care, because
Yeah.
by getting those answers, I'll just enhance. But I always challenge those coaches with, so then you're not using a smartphone, you're not using a smart car, you're not using a freaking coffee machine that works with Bluetooth. Like, if you're fearful of technology that much, then freaking go live in a cave somewhere, right?
100%, yeah.
The flip side of that, though, is I think you got a lot of young coaches that are coming out to where it's a shiny object. It's an easy thing to teach in an academic setting and show kind of academically that things, how they work and how you can manipulate the data, and and how to use it properly. But like using it in context, that's getting missed. And so so I think there's this gap where it's widening, where the old coaches maybe aren't wanting to invest the time to learn, but then you got young coaches that they're only going that direction, and the coach that can really get in there and motivate a guy to go run through a wall and come back and pick up the pieces. That's the part that's getting missed.
Right. In your opinion, from all the time you've been coaching, is there a piece of tech that you just like the most, that you came to like, I think this one really makes an impact? Obviously all of them need context, but I was just curious if you have an opinion on, man, I just really liked this piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think GPS has made the biggest impact on me and how I program. Just looking at when you're actually really track, high speed distance and collisions and max velocity and all the different things. Like, I think you're like, oh, look, all right, so this is a training session in the winter. This is a practice in season. Like,
Yeah.
all right, maybe I'm pushing a little too hard in January,
Okay.
So I think that probably has made the biggest impact on me, and knowing that, hey, look, I can do the math on this and work my way back, and not maybe push as hard, and maybe focus on some other areas like speed, or some other things that I can really try to improve upon in some of those times in the year. I really like the vision training and the neuroscience right now. I put a lot of time and effort into that.
Interesting. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like what you've seen, what you're learning?
Yeah, so like you look at I even going back to Tennessee, I put a Dynavision board in the weight room, two of them. I put a cognitive training simulator in there. In Washington, we were playing around with VR and using the Oculus glasses and those types of things. And I think, again, being able to tap into what, the gamification of it, but evaluate that. And I think this game, especially at this level where I'm at now, is more about the talent identification and being able to assess that quickly.
Okay.
I think using neuroscience to be able to do that, when you talk reactive agility, like we talked about the reactive Y test, or some of the neuro training and the, checking out those cognitive skills,
Yeah,
that can differentiate an athlete really quick.
that makes sense.
And it's a way to kind of really tap into assessment faster.
Okay. I remember talking to Tommy Moffitt, and he's the first person that introduced to me like that S2 cognition, that they do, and how being able to evaluate processing, especially for like a quarterback, for example. Like there's so much that goes into that that's really tough to evaluate training wise. It's really difficult to do. And you're seeing these things come about now that hopefully can have some type of relationship with on-field play. But at the same time, it seems like that's still in the works. Like that's still really hard to. But I mean, I guess you guys are continuing to push that.
Yeah, I think the application, again, it goes back to the application, right? And then also knowing that it's a piece of the pie, not the whole pie. Like I think it was Justin Fields. I think maybe had a really low S2 score at the combine, so he got killed on it. But then he's still the first pick, and
Yep.
and those types of things. I can't remember what
I think it
quarterback
was
that was.
C.J. Stroud. Remember C.J.
That was
Stroud had
that's
a
exactly
really
what it was.
had a really
Yeah,
bad score, but then like crushed it his rookie
yeah.
year.
Yeah, so and so like again, like it's a piece of the pie. It just gives you some information. Now, I think what the challenge in that is, all right, coming back and saying, okay, these are these cognitive skills that you're deficient in. Here are the drills that we have, and applying those cognitive skills to those drills. And when you do that, a lot of times you look at your you look at your linebacker individual drills, and you realize that out of all the drills that we do, 80% of them are just recognition. You're not looking at some of the other skills and working some of those things in. And so you're just reinforcing, sometimes an area that an athlete is already elite at, and maybe needs
Yeah.
working in another area. I think that, it's doing the work to be able to say and go through all your drills, assign them a value, and coming back and looking and saying, okay, I can maybe do a little bit better in this area, or be a little bit more well-rounded in this area.
Right. And does
Is the thing
that
that's being
affect
missed.
practice planning more than it? I'm curious to hear the involvement of like performance involved in practice planning. Like, has that really just become higher and higher of a demand as you've gone on in your career?
Yeah, I think that again, I mean, you go back all these years, and like it takes a certain amount of work to be elite. It takes a certain amount of work to be a great football team, and and there's only so many different ways that you can cut up that 2 hours that you might have with the 20-hour rule, the 8-hour rule, or whatever it might be. And so like I don't think that the actual structure of practice needs to change that much. I think it's when you set aside 15 minutes for individual period, what's done in that individual period can change quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Instead of running the same bag drills every single day and hitting the same sled every single day, I understand some repetition is good, but like that's a great time to work on some of these other skills and continue to create variety in your program, excitement for the athletes, challenge them in different ways. But again, when you're game planning and you're doing all these long hours and all these types of things, that's a place that often gets missed. So
Yeah.
having that kind of high performance person like me in the room, or somebody like that, is a benefit, because you can come in and say, hey, look, like, let me take this piece from you, or let me help you with this. Again, if you do it right, there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. It's just really interested to see how much strength coaches are involved with skill acquisition now, and not getting out of their lane per se, but it should be almost like a blend, being able everybody to kind of advise each other.
Yeah, I think it's something to really hit on. What you just said is, like, I think as strength coaches, it's really easy to sit in the freaking basement and say, I'm the expert when it comes to skill acquisition, and nobody's listening to me, and get on Twitter and get on all these things and bitch and complain, and, and all, and just, talk from the cheap seats. And I think the effective coach is the one that'll roll their sleeves up and learn the language, and learn how to work within the system and those types of things. So like, I think it's something that I've done my career. Now, whether that's right or wrong, or, that's up for debate, but like, I've never looked at myself as a strength coach. I've never have. I've always looked at myself as a football coach that my specialty is strength. Because working in this environment, like you have to have it a football lens. You have to,
Right.
and you have to understand how your piece works within that system. And it'd be very easy for me to sit in the cheap seats and be like, I got a PhD and I've got all these awards and all this experience, and you guys are idiots for not listening to me, But, if I'm, when I'm done training the team, instead of sitting there freaking around a round table, just BSing all day long in the weight room, and, I get up into, the practice planning sessions and watching the film and pointing out things in recruiting, and, then you become a resource in that way, and your knowledge is used, but I do have a hard time with coaches that, they want to hide behind whatever junk certification we have, and claim expertise. But it's like, no, like, there's some really, really talented football coaches in this world, and we have an obligation to kind of learn that. If we want to be in that world and we want to be valued in that world, then we need to roll our sleeves up and jump in it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% that it I think I understand it, because I feel like I fell into that boat some as a young coach, like the arrogance of you're trying to prove your value, but we go, like, as some young coaches go about it the wrong way, like go about it with trying to sound how smart you are, or I've got this certification, this degree, when in reality, if you try to go learn and serve, it actually really, really benefits you, like I feel like if there was any advice you were to give a young coach that, let's say, hey, you're getting a chance to train the football team, what are some of those things you mentioned were like, what are other ways that you can build some trust capital, with your staff, that you can connect and hopefully be accepted as, hey, I'm here to be a part of this, not to make myself bigger than what our end goals are, which is to win games.
Yeah, it's a good question. How I think going back to what I said about looking at things through a football lens, I think that's a critical piece. I had a coach at South Florida that was a maniac to work for, but I love him, and just it was the hardest guy to deal with. But he would always say, if I'd ask him for a piece of equipment, or I'd ask for this, or I'd ask for that, he'd always like, how's this going to win football games? And answering that question really taught me to look at things through that football lens. So I think, coming back and saying like, how's this going to win football games whenever you're faced with a decision, I think will help that. I think, things that I would do, like, just little like nuggets that I think you can take and implement right away. I think one thing that I would do is we would create individual periods within our training, because that's really just agility, right? It's just reactive agility or agility sessions. And so my goal, my kind of charge to our staff was like, we need to be researching these, research every freaking position drill you can possibly research. And we need to get it to where our coaches are stealing our drills during the fall.
Yeah. Love that.
And so when they start kind of stealing our drills and asking us how we're doing it and how we're implementing it, again, now you prop yourself up more as an expert in that way, and it's not something that you're going and you're like, hey, pound my chest, you should be listening to me, you're doing it wrong.
Sure.
It's, it's kind of like you said, it's going through and serving and doing the work. And I think the last thing is like, you got to own the athletes, like the athletes have to believe that you're getting them better to be a football player,
Man.
not just a stronger, weightlifter, but they are getting better at playing the game of football. And if they believe in you wholeheartedly, then coaches the coaches might not have always liked the way that I did things. Oftentimes they didn't, but they knew that I saw, our athletes saw results and our athletes bought and believed in what we were doing, and so that would be a losing battle if they went to the athlete or to the head coach, and so a lot of times that would kind of solve a lot of those little nitpicking problems.
Yeah, so that brings up a really good point. I think getting your guys to believe is over half the battle. I mean, that's a major piece. How has training and the approach to culture and team changed ever since this NIL and transfer portal era has hit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a book that I always recommend, coaches read, people read, and it's called Blue Ocean Strategy or Blue Ocean Strategy. I can't remember exactly what it was. Long story short, like when they go out shark fishing, they circle boats, they throw chum in the water, and all these sharks feed off this, they literally, they're picking fish out of a barrel, right? Instead of like the shark should be like, look, I'm a big freaking badass shark. I got this whole big blue ocean out here that I can go and freaking dominate. And so like anytime there's a change in technology, change in rules, change in anything, there's the coach that throws their hands up and bitches and complains and, and just wants to be on a soapbox for however long, right? And then there's the coach like me that's like, okay, what's the opportunity in this? Where's the blue ocean at?
Yeah.
And I think, NIL, like it is challenging. There's no doubt about it. It is becoming more transactional. There's no doubt about it. But when they walk in the building, whether or not they're getting paid $1 million or not, they want to win football games. They want to get better at being a football player. They want to know that you believe in them as an individual, and so those principles haven't changed at all, and so, going through the psychology, creating the environment that they feel like they're getting better, creating the environment to where there's shared trust, because that $1 million quarterback, he's probably living with a freaking walk-on third string quarterback, and they're best friends, and so if you go treat the third string quarterback like crap and you treat him a different way, they see that, and so like treating everybody with respect, treating everybody like, look, when we walk in this door, we all put on the same shirt. We're all trying to accomplish the same mission. And that means everybody's going to be held accountable to that goal. I think as long as you're consistent and you're transparent and you have a clearly defined accountability structure and those types of things, and you don't bend, then you'll maintain respect.
Yeah.
Regardless. Like when I coached in the NFL, like I remember vividly having the conversation with Warren Sapp, I was with Tampa Bay, and he didn't want to lift. And I don't, again, not trying to throw stones here, but like I don't even know if he could point to I don't even know if he could point to the right direction of the weight room at Miami, when he was there. But like he was naturally strong, and he'd come in and rep 315 like it was nothing. Be like, hey, what else you want me to do? And at that time he was literally making $16 million a year, which sounds like chump change now, but that was $1 million every game, because you got a game check. And it wasn't until we were sitting there talking one time and I'm like, look, dude, I'm just trying to make you go one more game in your career. I'm just trying to make you go 2 more games in your career. That's literally $2 million in your family's pocket. Like it wasn't until you framed it the right way that he was like, okay, that makes sense. And so again, like, you can pound your chest and you can be like, this is the way you should do it and get on your moral high ground, or you can find the creative solution to the problem and, come at it from a different angle.
Yeah. That's great points. Yeah. I actually, the way I've tried to view it, and even though I'm not in that world, is that it actually is really calling on coaches to be even better leaders, because now there's just different leverage points. There's kids that used to sign 4-year letters of intent, and then if they transferred, they have to sit out a year unless they had a waiver. But now guys can leave, but you're giving them a reason to stay. Like you're doing a really good job of leading to keep your group together if you can. So if you can convince a kid to stay and develop and buy in when they have the option to leave, now that's real. I don't know if you can call it discipline if you don't have options. If you don't have the option to leave, Is it really discipline?
Yeah, but I don't know if that's the gauge either, because I think like put yourself in the kid's shoes, right? You're getting X number of dollars or no dollars, and then all of a sudden, you're offered life-changing money.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
Like you're gone too, right?
100%.
It has nothing to do. Maybe it has nothing to do with you as a program or as a coach or
right.
Those types of things. But I do think like, when I'm again, Cincinnati or Tampa Bay or different, NFL Europe or whatever, like at the beginning of the year, or better yet, at the end of the year, like you hugged every player. You're like, dude, I hope you're back. I hope I'm back, and we'll go attack this thing again. But like, you knew that you were basically trying to build a 1-year team at that point,
Yeah.
And so again, like the purist in me, the strength coach in me, that's like, I wish I had 5 years of development still. Like I have a year of development. I have a year to create a really strong bond, tight football team. And if I just change my timeline and I approach it that way, then if I get the second year, that's a bonus. If I get the third year, that's a bonus, And so again, it's changing your frame of reference and being like, hey, look, let's commit to this thing for 1 year, and see where the pieces fall.
Sure.
But like for that year, like we're gonna all believe in the same thing. We're all gonna go the same direction. We're all gonna again, you have to be real. If you're not a real person, you're not an authentic person, like you're just not gonna last in this profession. You're just not.
Yeah.
And so like be real about the situation and know what you're up against, and then look for the opportunities.
Sure. Speaking of like shortening that timeline, like even from a nuts and bolts standpoint of training, has that changed too? As far as like, all right, you've got a lot of different bodies showing up, whether that's mid-year in January, whether that's in August or whenever, of trying to assess really fast and get all of these new guys ingrained in your system, right? Is that something that we've kind of done this every year anyway, and it's just, a lot of new bodies, or is there something different you've had to do?
I think your role as a strength coach has really been more so than ever before, has been to be the extension of the head football coach and build your team, between recruiting and all the junk. I mean, the coaches are away from the players more and more. And so like, you really have to accelerate that timeline. So like, back early on, I never really did this, to be honest with you, but I know a lot of coaches did, but they would, they'd have their freshman group, and then they'd have their sophomore group, and then they would have their, and they would do it kind of off of our, or they would divide their weight room up, and this is the veterans, and this is the, I've never done that, but like to me now, like that freshman, we're going to play, and that kid that we're paying, our NIL's paying X number of dollars, that kid's going to play.
Yeah.
He better play. He better play. And so like we have to build unity and trust and rapport within that group. So that freshman corner might be paired with that senior corner, might be paired with those two junior and sophomore safeties, at their rack. Okay, well, they're not at the same level of development, but I need to continue to build that trust amongst them, that communication level between them.
Right.
Those types of things. So that's where I think technology and tools like Rock Daisy and those types of things, it's like, okay, whereas maybe that freshman would be on a traditional 5x5 program or a Windler program or something along those lines. And that senior, maybe we're going more kind of to that VBT and working the speed side of the equation. Now it's like, okay, let's assign a time value to this. Okay, so maybe 5x5 is 25 reps. Maybe I'm doing 10 sets of 2 or 12 sets of 2 with my senior, about the same amount of time. But within that rack, when I get up, I'm able to quickly, because of technology and efficiency, I can change the weight and the speed and track it for my goal. And when my freshman gets up, he's tracking his goal. But we're staying within the same organization of the rack.
Yeah.
And so I think that's how to me, you've had to be creative in like how you structure the program to where everybody can do something that's individualized, but also, again, through a football lens, build a football team.
Right. Yeah. I think that's great. I think it's great nuggets to take from, same session, right? And maybe maybe if somebody just walked in to watch you training, it's like, no, everybody's squatting. Like, yeah. But, there may be some tiny details in there that you might catch based off what the guys need. But the team says, no, we're squatting. So that's like, we're all doing it to a certain standard together, even though it may be a different set rep scheme, percentage, whatever. Based on
and the athletes know it's different. And when you look across the room, everybody's working and everybody sees everybody working. And so that way, when you line up and it's 4th and 1 and you look to your left and your right, you know that everybody paid the price.
Yeah,
It's when you separate things out and I don't know if that guy really worked hard or not. That's when you got a problem.
Yeah, 100%. And there's so much truth to that. Well, Coach, man, I wanted to ask you this one last question before I let you go. And I know you've been a lifelong learner. You've been doing this a long time. Like I said earlier, probably longer than I've been alive. And what is like the current thing that's just like grasped your brain that you're currently learning? Like something that you're just like, man, this has really intrigued me, and something, maybe a rabbit hole you're going down right now in your career.
I finished my PhD in counseling. I did that intentionally for the fact that I think athletes, despite the money, despite the fame, despite their skill levels and all those types of things, I think their confidence levels probably are at an all-time low. And so really digging into how do you build not just a strong body, but a strong mind. I think, again, if you want to separate yourself as a strength coach, like I can go hire 1 million of you guys every day that know, progressions, regressions,
Dime a
set rep
dozen, right?
schemes,
Yep.
like I can hire 1 million of you, but like, can you get that freaking wide receiver that's elite, but maybe doesn't have confidence to want to lift the weights, to want to be uncomfortable, to want to be a team player? Can you get them to buy into what we're trying to do? And do it without being one of the bros, right? One of the people that's just going to dap them up and go play video games with them at night. Like that's
Great
not
point.
leadership. That's not leadership. And so, so to me, that's probably where a lot of my focus has gone. Like I always use this, there's a personality profile, the Gary Smiley personality profile, where you're either a lion, an otter, a beaver, a retriever, and having a mixed staff where you're having all these different types of personalities on staff that can balance out my weakness. But that's exactly what I look for now in coaches, is people that bring skill sets to the table that maybe I don't have, so that I can learn from. And again, like, you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be the guy that understands the 1080, the best in the room, because I'm going to freaking abuse you until I know it better. and then it's like, okay, you better bring a different skill to the table, and that's exactly what I tell all our young coaches is like I didn't even know what the internet was when I went to college. So like if I know it better than you, we got a problem.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah, no doubt. There's so much information at our fingertips now, but I'll tell you what, like there's nothing you can replace than getting out on that floor and interacting with those players. You can't duplicate that. You can't falsify that. You can't get on Instagram or TikTok and try to gamify that, or that's real. The same way you were saying leadership and all of that. I think that's a great lesson that we all need to take from this. So, well, Coach, I appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. I know that you took the time to come and hang out with us on the show. A longtime Rock Daisy customer, very loyal, but also just an unbelievable decorated career. And the fact that you're even continuing to seek education. You've been doing this a long time, just continuing to learn. Getting your PhD in counseling. Like, I didn't even know that. That's something I learned today. Like, how much value, you're just always trying to find ways to be valuable to the players, the team, your head coach. That's admirable. So I appreciate you continuing to set that example, Coach.
Appreciate that, man. And like I always say on these things, like I know how much work goes into putting these on, and appreciate what you're doing and how you're sharing and giving back, and just challenge, all the coaches that are listening. Like, we're still in the first 100 years of this thing. Like, we're still in the very first 100 years of this profession. So the more people like you, the more people that are out there that document this journey and put stuff out there and are willing to do that, the better we're all going to be, the better we're going to leave this profession 100 years from now. So pretty cool. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. All right, Coach. We'll let you go. I appreciate you coming to hang out.
Awesome. Thanks.